Hey everybody, Professor Stines here, and this video is kind of going to talk about different development environments, at least on a Windows machine. I'm kind of going to start off talking about Xampp because that's kind of where most people end up usually having a problem getting started in a more typical development environment than just kind of working with local files. We kind of introduced Xampp in iTech 3280 and when we start working with PHP. So this is kind of what some people encounter when they're working, when they first open up Xampp and try to run it, is something about Apache not being able to work because something isn't working. You kind of try to hit start, and it will say it's shut down. The reason why it's doing it on my machine, and different people have different types of machines, but pretty common. I'm kind of trying to explain some of the common reasons why. Is that I'm currently running another server on port 80. If I'm kind of looking at the Xampp control, this guy is going to be trying to start on port 80, and that's why it's kind of failing. If I look at the logs, well, somewhere in there. But essentially, that's what's happening. Is that I have IIS on my machine, and it's using port 80. Now, this is the computer management console. You can kind of get to it through your control panel, or if you kind of right click on my computer in your start menu and go to manage, you'll get to this, or you can kind of search for it. So in here you can see I have IIS installed, and that's one of the reasons it's blocking port 80. If you go to services here, this is where the different services that will can be identified. That would also be kind of like hitting the I think netstat. Kind of look for port 80. You can see that the system is kind of using it. That's the IIS system. If you're having problems with SQL Server on Xampp, that's port 3306. It might be a little bit further down. I don't have anything using 3306. But if in iTech 3245, you might be messing with my SQL Server, and that might come up in the list there. So there's a couple different ways you can handle it. I'm going to show you my preferred way first, and that's to kind of look through the list that's in Computer Management for Services, and IIS is actually the web publishing service down here at the bottom, and you can see that it started. I have mine set to manual. By default, this guy will be kind of set to automatic, but I kind of changed mine to manual. That way it doesn't start when my computer starts, and it's running right now, so I'm going to stop it. Now that'll kill my current local host site, and it won't work. But what will happen is that if I come back to Xampp now and hit start, I should be able to kick up on port 80 and 443. And so Xampp should work, and that looks good. And same problem here. I'm going to kind of go back and I'm going to hit stop here, and then come back. If it's MySQL 3306 that's causing the problem, then you probably need to come up here and look in the M's for MySQL, or maybe the S's for SQL Server, if you're maybe messing with SQL Server. It also uses port 3306. So I'm going to start mine back up so that way I can kind of show if you can't identify it, because that's probably the two common reasons. I've also seen Skype use port 80 and some other stuff use port 80. So you might have to come in here back to Xampp. It won't work now because we've got something running on 80. But if you come into the config file for Apache, it's kind of a big file, and hopefully it won't be too scary. But if you just do a Control F for 80, you kind of see that it's in a couple of places. It's listening on port 80. There's the pound sign that's there. The pound signs are comments, so this is actually the only one that applies. I might change that to 8080. And the server name localhost at 80, that might also be 8080. And I think that's the only two we'll need to change. Listening on 8080. It might be worth updating the comments too. just so we come back in the future we're not confused. Let's save that. Close it. So if I try to start it now, and again, you might have to also change 443 to maybe like 4443. The important thing is that you're choosing ports that don't exist, aren't being used elsewhere. So if you choose kind of a random number, you're most likely not going to hit a current port that's being used. You might have to do the same thing for SQL. The difference here is that now this link won't work. It's going to kind of divert back to my local host, my IIS instance that's running. But to get to the Xampp, it would be localhost colon 8080. And this would be kind of my my test environment. So if I was looking at Xampp in the Explorer, kind of looking at the different files I got out here, I have a KMP website. /KMP. No, because I put future video. And so that's kind of how I could still be using two development environments at the same time. So, I could be using Xampp. I might have to change some settings in Apache to make it work. But then I could still also be using MySQL or IIS or something like that. So I hope that kind of solves some of the problems with Xampp. I'm going to hit stop and go back into config. It's actually, that's not what I want to do. I actually want to change it back because I don't like having kind of two environments running at the same time. So, like I said, change that back to 8080. And like I say, you might have to do a search for 3306 for the MySQL port, or that's not in this comp file. Let's close that. That would be in this config file, INI. We'd be wanting to change that port number. Now you could also kind of use, if you wanted to use your regular MySQL instance, you could. You don't necessarily have to use Xampp's instance. Since you're already kind of using this connection, what you could do is you could just kind of create your database out there and your current one. And as long as the config strings in Apache are good, you should be able to still connect to it. If you turn stuff in, though, you still don't want to drop your database down and send it to me as a backup or something, so I know you're seeing it. Because it won't be or screenshots to show that you actually have your database. It's kind of one of the difficulties in Xampp, maybe, is kind of working with databases. It's one of the benefits of .NET, I think, is app data folder and newer .NET applications is really handy. So, like I said, I got this guy set to manual and kind of double click on it and change the startup type. It's probably automatic by default. And if you don't have IIS and you're kind of interested because it looks kind of neat and what you can do with it, Web Development Tutorials is written in ASP.NET. But I have other things out here written in other languages that I mess around with on occasion. Xampp will not do .NET for you. To get started, what you need to go get is the Web Platform Installer. Well, I looked for PHP, but Web Platform Installer. It has PHP in it. So you're going to kind of want to download and install that guy. And what you're going to get, I'm going to open. It's kind of a program that makes it kind of one-click easy to install a lot of different stuff for development and web development for Windows. So it might take me a second for mine to come up. All right, buddy, come on. You can do it. I'm afraid if I start it twice, it's going to run twice. Yeah, let's let's see if we hope for that to run for a second and catch up to us. Essentially, after we get done, what's going to get created is kind of this console right now. This information this tab in computer management won't be there for you, but after what I show you through web platform, it should be. All right, web platform, what's your deal? Why don't you want to start up? Do I already have it running back here somewhere or something? Oh, I do. Gosh. Okay, so it's back here. A good way to get started is to kind of look in server under products. And the good one to get started with is recommended configuration, IIS recommended configuration. If you hit add for that, that'll kind of get everything installed and started. It'll kind of undo probably auto install some of this other stuff as inheritance too. But you might want to kind of double check and make sure that you got IIS Express, and probably will all come in at once. I also have PHP installed, 1.6 for IIS Express, and I also have some frameworks installed. I'm kind of seeing where the tools, maybe some tools. That one's not important. It's just something I played with one day. PHP Manager for IIS and tools is probably a good one to have. Kind of what that guy will do is when you're looking at a website, it'll kind of add this little PHP Manager. And so you kind of could change some of the controls that are, some of the extensions that are available. Kind of helps you edit the PHP ini file without having to do it through a text editor. That should do pretty good. Let's see. Dun, dun, dun. Probably some other stuff worth playing around in here. Database. I don't think I have anything in here. Yeah, some SQL Server stuff probably be worth having. Local edition, that kind of makes the app data folder work, I think. So once you kind of hit install on all those and hopefully get them all running and updated, you might have to run Windows updates on your computer too. But hopefully you come back to a site that looks like this, and you can kind of click on here. By default, it'll kind of look like that. You'll kind of have to open it up a little bit to show the different sites that are attached. And it's essentially how kind of a web server works in WinServer 2012, is that you kind of can right-click, add new websites, create different application pools that they can run under, so they're kind of treated as different applications. And you can kind of see this is the website I had to find out there right now, which is IT Web Tutorials website, and that's kind of all the code that exists for it. I could kind of come in here and start making changes at folder level, or on the whole website itself. You kind of have to be really careful about what you're clicked on when you're trying to make a change, because if I'm on the errors folder and I change an SSL setting, it affects that folder, but maybe I wanted to change the whole website. So you got to be really kind of careful where you're at in your path here. Some interesting things to play around with once you kind of first get in might be to change the default document, or maybe change where the website's pointing to. So let's start with where it's pointing to. That would be right-click on the website, manage the site, advanced settings. This is sort of the path that I have right now. CINetPub is this folder is one of the things that kind of automatically get created for you when you make .NET, or when you install IIS, not .NET, IIS. So that's CINetPub www-root. So if this is your first time, you'll probably have a lot of files out here that kind of give you a little basic website when you call up localhost the first time. Essentially what I did is I deleted them all and created a dev folder, and I right click and I go to send to desktop, create shortcut. So I have a desktop on my shortcut straight to my dev folder. That gets me to about like right here. And this is where I kind of keep my different projects that I've worked on that have kind of been worth saving. I got them saved in lots of other places too. But so I actually have a version of the KMP website out here. So this is the web tutorials website. I'm going to change that path to the KMP website instead. So that's C inetpub www.root dev KMP. Click OK. I might have to restart the website. I might not. I'll just go to back to localhost, and there's kind of my version of it. Kind of the benefit of doing it this way is that you don't have to define a folder structure like we did on, on Xampp. We kind of had to do /KMP, but it's a little bit easier to kind of change exactly where the root of your website is in IIS, at least in Win 7. So it's kind of my site out there right now. Like I said, default document, what I was playing around with earlier is I'm going to kind of make a video in a little bit on how to chop up a PHP template. So if you want to kind of make sure that PHP is working, right now this is the /index.htm page, but I do have a /index.php page. It says hello world. So I'm going to kind of rewrite this page to be PHP, chop it up into a template with a header and footer includes, and demonstrate some server side. That's kind of my plan in the next video. But if I wanted IIS to serve my PHP page instead of my index page, right now it's serving my index page. When I'm clicked on the website, I could just go to default document, and there's my index.php. Index.htm is higher, so I'm just going to need to move it up one. So it's kind of neat, right? Some other interesting stuff out here other than kind of setting default documents. I'm going to set this one back up for right now. Yeah. Some other interesting stuff though is error pages. You can kind of set different error codes that occur. You can kind of forward them off to a page or something like that, or send them to a URL, send them to a. This is kind of like the default page that comes up under a 404. So you can kind of change that to be something else, maybe your own custom 404 page. There's the PHP Manager. That was kind of one of the tools that we installed. So we can kind of go in and change some stuff there. SSL settings, pretty neat. Let's see, I covered most of them. I've spent some time in MIME types sometimes as maybe there might be a MIME type that doesn't exist. Maybe PHP did not get added or something like that. And so you have to kind of look in the list and see if there's a certain MIME type that's associated to it. I actually don't see PHP in there. It's probably higher level. Kind of configure some email settings and stuff too. What your SMTP server settings would be. Maybe you use a web dev server instead. Put in the, go to Google. Gmail SMTP settings. Yeah, could kind of use something to that effect. You'd probably be limited though. Don't send spam. Probably disable your account. So anyway, that's kind of what IIS is. In Win 7, you could kind of create new websites and stuff, but I just kind of always just mess with the default site and switch settings based on which one I'm working on. Like I said, it's set to manual, so when I start my computer, I don't have any kind of development environment running, but I only kind of have this running when I need to have it running. So it's not kind of always running in the background. Don't want to eat in my CPU cycles. So anyway, hope you find it interesting. Probably applies to iTech 2380 or 3280 at least, and 4286 kind of .NET if you're kind of wanting to work on a .NET application. I actually do kind of have one. Let's see, default website, and change the bindings again. I'm pretty sure I wrote the web tour in .NET. Yeah, it looks like it. Yeah, I kind of got bored. Someone mentioned something about a big giant photo tour thing, and so I threw together some stuff, and I was kind of bored trying to take the idea somewhere, see if I could make something interesting happen. And so it's just kind of like a drop-down list of folders that kind of get auto-generated through some .NET code. It'd actually be really interesting to kind of talk about. I'm kind of glad I found it because actually might be some good code to talk about in there, at least in context of 4286. Let's see. Oh, it's going to be pretty. Let's look. And let's look. What's neat about it is that the pictures are all kind of auto-generated based on folder structure, and the names in the drop-downs are actually based on folder structure as well. So if I kind of look at the pictures folder, there's a Cochran, Eastman, Macon folder. There's some pictures in here. And then there's folders inside of folders. There's the Mount Everest folder, Mount McKinley folder. All I'd really have to do is say Cochran Gateway Hallway or something. Gateway dorm. I think that's a dorm. Hit refresh. Or load it again. Probably have to load it again. Whoop. That's not what I wanted to do. Cochran, Gateway dorm. Essentially, these would be all pictures of Gateway dorm. So, what makes it so awesome is really just kind of the default page and the code behind. Is that if we're not posting back the page, basically, if we're first time we're loading it, that's why we kind of start fresh. Is that find the system URL, kind of add a pictures folder to it, and then we're going to create a directory info that kind of contains everything that's in there. So this is kind of the object that contains all of the pictures and all of the things in the pictures folder. And as long as it's there, then we're going to print out the pics by getting the files. That's a function we're calling, passing in all the files to it. And finally kind of looping through and cleaning out the name, filling out the text boxes for campus. And each time the campus gets changed, then the second box needs to get loaded. And so kind of the same thing is that we kind of look from the folder of where we're at right now, find all of the folders that exist in it. And print pics isn't too bad. We're just kind of going through all the file infos, all the files that are coming through, and printing out some HTML that's going to kind of point to the picture and give it some alt text by cleaning up the name. So actually it wasn't, just kind of was bored one afternoon, figured, I needed to get a little bit more familiar with, I was actually going to try to figure out how to do it through that instead, but I think I changed my mind. The actual default page probably doesn't have a whole lot in it. It's using a little jQuery carousel slider that I probably found out on the internet somewhere, and just kind of writes out two strings of a drop-down list and two strings. I kind of build out the structure that the slider needs. Yeah. So it's actually not a lot of code, but it's kind of neat, right? I need to optimize the images a little bit. So anyway, kind of a long video. I'm going to kind of maybe post this in all my classes. So it seems kind of relevant to everybody. So hopefully, kind of get you into using IIS a little bit, maybe, or fix the problems in Xampp, or maybe uh, give you an idea of something that you can just kind of go out there and play around with and see if you can find something cool, build something cool. This would be, if I'm looking at, I say portfolio a lot, and this would be like my example of a portfolio is that I'd just be like, I was really busy or I was really bored and was like, I can do something cool, and I did, and it's really kind of lame, but in the same sense, it's kind of awesome too. It's kind of my personal portfolio, part of my personal portfolio, I guess. So, encourage you to build your own, and don't underestimate yourself. Even little things that are cool or can be kind of cool. So don't underestimate what you can do, or what you might not be ultimately happy with what you do. I wasn't ultimately happy where I ended with this, and was like, finally I was like, this idea is really lame, and I need to do something else. And essentially, I think that's what we did, and we came out with. We had two problems, I think. I think one problem was we couldn't figure out how to organize that many pictures. That was kind of like a big idea. Like, how do we get hundreds of your concept, Alan, contains hundreds of pictures. That's a little bit much. Can we narrow that down a little bit? And I think it's on a admissions page. Photo tour. Yeah, I think that's it. It might take a little bit to load. It's kind of the same concept. It's just it doesn't have the drop-down lists in it, so it's not. We're not trying to break it out by location or anything like that. I think what drove them away is that I used locations like this. Is that like, well, we can just take pictures of the gateway dorm. It's like, well, how many are we gonna have to take? I mean, you're talking, Alan. You're talking like hundreds of pictures here. Well, yeah, but it would be awesome. So it'd be cool if someone just went through and took all the pictures and just made the code work. That'd be pretty neat. Dress it up a little bit. Anyway, I hope you found it cool. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. Have a good one. Bye.